Against the grey sky, it rises like a forgotten skeleton, Blackwood Sanatorium. Born in an era when medicine groped between hope and despair, it became both refuge and prison for those whom society preferred to forget. Victims of tuberculosis, fractured minds, bodies marked by incurable diseases. A repository of suffering disguised as a sanatorium. Its once imposing architecture is now torn apart. Exposed bricks like broken bones, windows like empty sockets, witnessing the forest advancing. To claim its territory, the main gate, a twisted mass of rust, groans a perpetual lament to the wind. Even from a distance, a palpable pressure hangs in the air, a weight that seems to oppress, a premonition of something terrible. The few remaining residents miles away avoid its name. They report erratic lights in the tall windows during the night, figures moving behind the dirty glass, decades after the last patient was removed or simply disappeared. The official closure, in the 70s, cited lack of funds, but the local whispers tell another story. They speak of a dark incident, something that sealed Blackwood's fate and condemned it to eternal abandonment. Crossing the threshold is like entering a lung that stopped breathing. The air is thick, saturated with the odor of mold, decay, and a faint trace, almost forgotten, of medicinal chemicals and disease. The dust, a thick shroud, muffles every sound, except those born from the crumbling structure, or perhaps from something else. Our steps echo like a profanation in this sepulchral silence. The entrance hall is a ghost of its former glory. Cracked marble, stained by decades of infiltration, trickles down the walls like black tears. Yellowed papers, records perhaps of patients, scattered like dry leaves. A wheelchair overturned, its wheels slowly turning as if just abandoned. A solitary stretcher leaning against a dark corner, its leather straps broken, a mute witness to countless agonies. An overwhelming sense of being watched pervades the space. Shadows seem to dance at the periphery of vision. Each creak of the ancient structure sounds like a held breath. The walls seem to hold more than just moisture and dust. They hold echoes of a suffering so deep it refused to dissipate, embedding itself in the very essence of the place. This silence, it is too heavy, too intense, almost as if it holds a terrible secret. If you have ever felt the weight of a place like this, mark your presence in this dark corridor with a like, a silence that will soon be shattered by sounds that defy any logical explanation, sounds that will freeze you to the bone. We move past the entrance hall, swallowed by Blackwood's endless corridors. The silence here is different, deeper, heavier, as if the thick walls absorb not only sound, but light itself. The only illumination comes from pale beams that filter through filthy windows, cutting through the gloom, revealing layers of dust that dance in the still air, like ashes from a past that refuses to settle. Peeling paint falls from the walls, in long, pale flakes, revealing previous layers of faded institutional colors, sickly greens, deep blues. Rusted signs still point the way to now sinister destinations. East Wing, Surgical Room 3, Radiology. Each name is a cold reminder of the original purpose of this place, now perverted by abandonment and whatever remained behind. And then, the silence begins to crack, not abruptly but subtly. First, a slow creak from the floor above, easily dismissed as the building giving into time. Then, a low sound, a soft drag, like heavy fabric being pulled across rough flooring. Coming from a dark room ahead, we stop, holding our breath, ears straining, nothing. Silence returns, even more oppressive for having been broken. We continue, the sensation of being watched intensifying with every step. It is almost palpable, a pressure on the back of the neck, a chill that does not come from the cold. Though the air here is undeniably cold, a damp chill that seeps through clothes. And then we hear it, Clear as crystal in the stillness, footsteps, not the hurried steps of an intruder, nor the random scuffle of an animal. Measured, deliberate steps, the sound of rubber soles perhaps, like those worn by nurses, echoing softly down the hall. Above us, they move back and forth, pause, then start again, a rhythm so normal in its impossibility that it sends a shiver through the spine. Who would be walking through the upper floors of a long-abandoned sanatorium? The sound stops as suddenly as it began. The silence that follows is thick with expectation. Each shadow seems deeper, each dark corner seems to hide a crouching form. We look upwards, to the stained, cracked ceiling as if we could see through it. There is nothing, only the weight of history and the invisible presence that we now know without a doubt shares this space with us. What inexplicable sound would unnerve you most in a place like this? Share your most chilling thoughts in the comments below, if you dare. Further ahead, a half-open door to one of the rooms creaks faintly, swaying back and forth as if pushed by a breeze that doesn't exist. Inside, the darkness is near complete, but for a brief moment something moves in the corner of our vision. Something low, crouched near the window, or merely a play of light and shadow. Before we can focus, the door closes with a soft click. Murmurs, faint, almost inaudible, like the rustling of dry leaves in the wind, but there is no wind here. They seem to come from the walls themselves, or perhaps from far, far away, or from very close. Indistinct words, fragments of conversations or laments, rising and falling on the auditory scale, fading before any meaning can be gleaned. Are these the echoes of the past, or voices from the present? Blackwood's silence was not empty. It was merely a pause, a held breath before the next sound, the next movement. The quiet was shattered, and with it, the illusion that we were alone. Something is here, something that walks, that watches, that perhaps whispers. And the growing sensation is that these sounds are only the prelude. The true horror still rests, hidden, waiting in the decaying heart of this place. Perhaps locked behind a specific door, in a place that all fear, the morgue. If the tension is building for you as well, show that you resist with a like before we descend further. The descent into Blackwood's bowels is inevitable. Following the faded signs pointing to auxiliary services and morgue, the path leads us downward through cracked, damp stairs where daylight scarcely penetrates. The air becomes colder, denser, carrying a different odor, a mixture of residual formaldehyde, wet earth, and something older, more organic, the unmistakable smell of slow decomposition. Down here, the abandonment is even deeper. Rusted pipes line the ceiling, dripping dark, oily liquid into stagnant puddles on the floor. The sound of the droplets echoes irregularly, like a macabre countdown. Forgotten tools, unidentified machinery parts, and piles of stained sheets rot. In the corners, covered by spider webs thick as shrouds, the sensation of being watched intensifies. These are not just the eyes of imagination, it's a physical pressure, as if the very air is saturated with a silent, malevolent attention. Shadows seem to stretch and writhe at the edges of vision, and every creak of the building, every drop of water seems amplified in this confined underground space. A heavy metal door, its paint chipped, revealing stained steel beneath, blocks the way. One word is etched on it, barely legible beneath grime and rust. Morgue. The doorknob is cold to the touch, a chill that seems to pierce to the bone. We hesitate for a moment. This is Blackwood's cold heart, where the journey of many patients officially ended. But the legends, the sounds, suggest that for some, the end never came. With a protesting metallic groan, the door gives way. The air that escapes from inside is frigid, laden with that same chemical decaying stench, but now more concentrated, more nauseating. The space beyond is dark, but we can make out familiar, disturbing shapes. Stainless steel autopsy tables, stained and marked by long-gone instruments, Body storage drawers lined up against the wall, some slightly ajar, revealing only dark emptiness. But not everything is empty. On one of the tables, covered by a dirty, stiffened sheet, lies a vaguely human shape. It's not recent. The dust gathered on the sheet attests to decades of abandonment. Yet there is something terribly wrong with the way the sheet is arranged, as if something beneath it had recently moved, disturbing the dust in certain places. And there's more. On the floor near the storage drawers, a dark, dry trail snakes toward a drain in the center of the room. It doesn't look like old blood. It has a different texture, almost as if something thick and oily had leaked or been dragged. In a dark corner, almost hidden behind an overturned cart of instruments, something catches our eye. An open logbook, its pages yellowed and fragile, covered in a fine layer of dust, except for one specific page that seems to have been touched more recently. Under the weak light of the lantern, the hurried, nearly illegible handwriting reveals disturbing notes, dates, patient names, and next to several of them, not the words deceased or released, but a strange notation repeated several times with darker, almost frantic ink. Subject transferred. Procedure initiated. Status awaiting. Awaiting? Awaiting what? The procedure. What procedure would be performed on the dead? A cold shiver runs down the spine, not just from the chilling atmosphere, but from the terrible implication of those words. Blackwood's macabre secret was not merely about ghosts or echoes from the past. It was something active, something deliberate, something that happened here beneath the dust and despair. Was it a profane experiment that tore the veil between life and death? A supernatural force that nestled within the foundations, fed by decades of pain? Or a failure of reality itself, a place where the finality of death became a mere comma in an eternal pause? The truth behind status awaiting may never be known to those who live under the sun. The sounds echoing through the morgue, the dragging chains, the movement under the sheet. They weren't ghosts, not in the traditional sense. They were them. The patients who never left, those marked as awaiting, preserved in some grotesque manner, whether conscious or not, trapped in a liminal state between life and decomposition, their bodies perhaps inert, but with something still there. A residual spark of awareness, a motor echo trapped in an eternal cycle. Or worse, something a profane procedure performed here inflicted on them. They weren't dead. They were waiting. Waiting for what? Or for whom? Waiting for an order to rise. Or perhaps waiting for us. Waiting for a living presence to break the monotony of their timeless prison. The door to the morgue, which we had left slightly ajar, begins to close slowly with a prolonged metallic groan. There's no wind, no draft. Something or someone outside is pushing it shut. The scratching inside the drawers grows more frantic, louder. The movement under the sheet on the table becomes more pronounced, almost convulsive. If your heart is racing like mine, leave a like to mark this moment of pure terror. We open our eyes to Blackwood's true nightmare. The horror was not the dead, buried and forgotten. It was the present, refusing to die. The sanatorium wasn't just haunted by memories. It was inhabited by preserved husks, animated by an unknown force, trapped in a cycle of waiting that would never end. And now, it seems the wait is over. The silence has been broken and the presence detected. The eyes that shouldn't see are now turning to us in the dark. The next sound we hear may not be a scratch or a groan. It may be the sound of the door locking. To not miss what happens next in this and other dark places, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, if you dare. The sound of the morgue door closing is the final crack in sanity. The metallic groan ends with a heavy click, final and definitive. We are locked down here in the cold heart of Blackwood, with the secret it has desperately kept. The scratching in the drawers stops abruptly. The silence that follows is worse than any sound. It's an expectant, predatory silence. Then, one of the lower drawers creaks and slides open, slowly. At first, nothing is visible, just a deeper darkness. But then a pale hand, with long, thin fingers like dry branches, emerges from the dark, gripping the edge of the drawer. It tightens the white joints and pulls. Another drawer, higher up, starts to open as well. The sheet on the autopsy table is violently thrown to the side, revealing something that barely resembles a human shape. Skin stretched tight and translucent over bones, eyes sunken in dark sockets that seem to stare at us, even though there's no sign of life in them. The mouth opens in a silent, unnatural "oh" and begins to rise. Pure panic takes over. There is no thought, only the primal instinct to flee. We run for the heavy door, banging on it, trying to turn the cold doorknob that doesn't give. Is it locked from the outside, or sealed by some invisible force that governs this place? Behind us, the sound of metal dragging on the ground. The creature from the table is standing. The sound of bones cracking as limbs long immobile are forced to move. Desperation leads us to the only other apparent exit, perhaps a service passage, a smaller, rustier door in a dark corner. We force it open and it groans, revealing an even narrower and darker corridor, smelling of earth and confinement. We run, not looking back, our frantic footsteps echoing terribly loud. But we are not alone in the escape. The sounds follow us, the slow, heavy dragging of the morgue creature. And more footsteps, those measured steps of rubber soles, coming from side corridors, converging. The murmurs are no longer just echoes. They seem to come from moving shadows at our side. Dry voices like dead leaves, whispering incomprehensible words that freeze the blood. We climb stairs blindly, stumbling over debris, the heart hammering against our ribs, the cold air burning our lungs. We emerge onto a floor we vaguely recognize, perhaps the east wing. The main exit, it has to be near. We race the final meters, hands reaching for the massive dark wooden double doors, the promise of freedom just ahead. They don't budge, not an inch. We push with all our weight, shoulders against the cold, solid wood. Nothing. Are they locked? Blocked? Or is the sanatorium itself refusing to let us go? We look through the gaps in the windows beside the door. Outside, the forest seems darker, denser, the twisted trees like claws. There is no sign of the outside world, only Blackwood and its suffocating aura. A sound behind us, slow, dragging. We turn slowly, terror freezing our limbs. Standing at the end of the corridor that leads back into Blackwood's depths is the figure from the morgue, and beside it, other shadows begin to emerge from the dark side corridors. Tall figures, short ones, some dragging themselves, others standing still, all turn towards us with a silent, terrible attention. The awaiting have come. The wait is over. Run or pray? The question echoes in our minds, but the answer seems terribly clear. The doors of Blackwood were never meant to be opened from the inside. It was not just a building, it was a trap, a tomb that breathes. And now, we are part of its permanent collection. Fate was not just sealed, it was waiting for us at this exact moment, in this exact place. The eternal echo of Blackwood is about to gain new voices, ours.